Stranger Things, the show that took the world by storm, releasing 5 seasons since its release in 2016, and today we're going to be rating all of the seasons and seeing how they stack up against each other. Now, if you watched my last video, you might know where I have one of these seasons, but I don't know if anybody knows where I have the other 4, so let's stop wasting time and let's get into it. So coming in last place is, in my opinion, one of the most disappointing seasons in TV history, aside from maybe Game of Thrones, is Stranger Things Season 5. Now, before you come after me and say that's a crazy opinion, I know that I'm a little harsh on this season, but I'm going to be honest, I don't really think it's my fault. I think it's mainly the fault of the Duffer Brothers for just completely mismarketing this season. I mean, they said time and time again how this season was going to be, the darkest season of the show. And, when Volume 2 released, they said it was going to be a dark Christmas. And literally nothing happens, especially in Volume 2. I think Volume 1 has its moments. I think Episode 4 is particularly amazing, especially that ending scene with the Demogorgon attacks, and then Will getting his powers. I love that scene in that episode, but Episode 1 was just really slow, and just felt really weird. And even 3 just weren't anything to write home about. When Volume 2 came out, I still had a little bit of hope, because again, I didn't hate that Volume 1, but then Volume 2 just, I don't know what the Duffer Brothers were thinking, but it was honestly, pretty awful. It was just so repetitive, and there were some great moments in it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna try to be like, oh, all of it was bad. I love the Steve and Dustin scene when they make up. Will's scene where he comes out to the group, I thought that was great. I thought it was poorly timed. I feel like it should have been a little bit earlier in the season, maybe episode 6. And I did like the Jonathan and Nancy scene on the table, but then apparently that was them breaking up, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. I thought that was the dumbest thing they could have done in that scene. Because, they've been together since, season 2? And then they just have, this weird breakup that people didn't even know was a breakup. The Duffer Brothers had to confirm it in an interview later on. If you have to explain what happens in your season in interviews after the season comes out, you clearly failed in some way. And then Episode 8 came out, and I was happy with it. I thought it was a satisfying ending to the show. Again, I think things could have been a little bit better, but I'm not going to complain about it too much. I don't really even want to complain about it. I don't find that fun. But Season 5 did have its great moments, so I'm not going to completely write it off. But again, I just think the Duffer Brothers' lack of marketing the season in the correct way is really what kind of lowers this season for me. But then moving on to the seasons that I actually just, really love. I love every single one of these next 4 seasons, and it was really hard for me to rank them, especially my 1, 2, and 3 spot. My number 4 spot was a little bit easier, because there is one glaring issue that I have with it that I don't have with the other seasons. And I'm sure everybody knows what it's going to be, because of nobody's surprise, coming in at 4th place is Stranger Things Season 2. Now, Season 2 is, in my opinion, the most underrated season and the most overhated season, because I think there's some really great stuff in it. I love the Halloween vibes. I love the Hopper and Eleven stuff. I love the Steve and Dustin stuff. I love the Jonathan and Nancy stuff. I love Max and Billy getting introduced. There is so many good things that happen in this season. It's really just that Episode 8, The Lost Sister, that really lowers it compared to the other 3. And I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm not going to harp on the episode. Nobody really likes it, which I think is really unfortunate, because I think the episode could have been something really cool, but I think what they should have done is release it as a separate little short, special feature along with the season, so you could go back and watch that when the season was over. But other than that, this season is absolutely amazing. I love the Shadow Monster, the Mind Flayer's shadow form, I guess. That is my favorite version of the Mind Flayer, and that's my favorite monster in this show. I think he's so intimidating. Every time he's on screen, you feel like the characters are in danger. And then the Demodogs and just everything that happens in this season I love so much. So it pains me to put it at number 4, but it has to go there. And then these next 3 spots, I'm not going to lie, these next 3 could honestly change places. They probably will, because the order I have it in right now might be different tomorrow, might be different the next day. I love all these seasons. I think they're all 10 out of 10, so it's really hard for me to rank them. But as much as it pains me to say this, coming in at 3rd place is going to be Stranger Things Season 1. Season 1 accomplished something that I think a lot of shows are struggling to do, which is have a first season that is just perfect. I mean, think about what the Duffer Brothers had to deal with here. They brought in a bunch of kid actors who are completely unknown. They had a couple of actors who, were fairly well known in the 80s and the 90s with Winona Ryder and David Harbour. But other than that, there wasn't many well-known actors in this show, and they somehow just created this masterpiece. And this is also the Duffer Brothers' first actual time directing and writing anything. They directed, I think, one like short film a long time ago, but this is like their directorial debut, and they made one of the best seasons in television history, which is just absolutely amazing. But season 1 is so much fun. You know, starting off the episode, seeing the kids playing D&D, and then following Will getting captured by this unknown monster, and then seeing, you know, his group of friends go on this adventure to try to find them. And then seeing Jonathan and Nancy kind of discover this thing as well, but separately on their own, and just having all these different experiences than the kids, and then having Joyce and Hopper on their own adventures, and, you know, they're also, you know, trying to figure this out. And something I think that this season does so well, and I always talk about this, and I think my dad actually, like, reminded me of this. My favorite thing is they don't drag along the storyline of Hopper not believing Joyce and thinking she's crazy. Obviously, in the first episode or two, he's like, you know, this is clearly insane. But, like, right when he figures it out, he figures it out. They're not wasting time. They're not waiting 5 episodes for everybody to start believing them. You know, people kind of start believing it pretty quickly, which I think moves the story along so much quicker, and I love that. And then the ending of this season was just so ballsy. You know, basically killing off your main character. Obviously, Eleven didn't die, but she's gone, and nobody knew if she was alive or not when the season ended. And that was so risky for the Duffer Brothers to do, but I love that they did it, because it just made it feel like there are actual stakes in this show, which I feel like was kind of the issue with season 5. But, you know, you feel the stakes, and you just feel, you know, the heartbreak in this group of kids. And, you know, the ending of this season basically being how we opened the season with the kids just playing D&D again. Talking about it makes me want to rewatch this season right now. I love it so much. Honestly, I would put this at number 1, number 2 spot. But again, just today, this is how I'm feeling, and this is my ranking. But coming in at number 2 is Stranger Things Season 3. Now, Season 3 absolutely has the best vibes of any season. I love that it takes place in the 4th of July, you know, kind of time. I think it brings so many, like, cool opportunities to the season. Like my favorite scene in the entire show, the Battle of Starcourt, where they're, you know, fighting the Mind Flayer with fireworks. That is my favorite scene in the entire show. I think it is so visually beautiful. It's just so much fun. But this season upped the stakes so much because, you know, the first season you're dealing with the Demogorgon, who's kind of like human-sized, obviously a little bit bigger. And then season 2, you're dealing with a lot of Demodogs, and you're also dealing with the Mind Flayer, the Shadow Monster, but he never comes into the real world. But then in season 3, you're just dealing with this, like, 2-story, like, human flesh monster, which was absolutely insane. I think people forget, you know, pretty quickly, the Mind Flayer murders, like, probably like 200 to 100 people to build this monster for himself, and like it's crazy to me. And you know, I just love, you know, kind of them taking over Billy and kind of possessing him, and then just seeing him gradually get worse and worse and worse and just more infected, and then just seeing his redemption in episode 8 was just amazing. And then just the whole vibes, the whole setting of this season was just so much fun. I think like the entire mall aspect, the mall setting was so much fun, and I think all the characters, aside from obviously my next season, I think all the characters are at their best in season 3. And then the ending of this season, you know, them basically killing off Hopper or making us think that he's dead, and then cutting to, you know, the Byers moving away, and, you know, the final scene of basically the montage of them kind of leaving and packing up, and then Hopper reading his letter over this scene, it like brings tears to my eyes. It makes me bawl my eyes out every time I watch it, even now. So I think this season completely deserves the 2nd place spot. And then coming in 1st place, to nobody's surprise, is Stranger Things Season 4, and which in my opinion is one of the greatest seasons in television history, if not the greatest. You know, right off the bat, look at what the Duffer Brothers had to deal with when, you know, making this season. They started filming, I think like maybe like a year after Season 3 released, and then they were immediately hit with the pandemic, and they had to completely pause all like production for like 2 years. And then all of these delays kind of built up and led to them having to make every episode, I think like over an hour and a half long, or maybe even over an hour and 40 minutes long. So they basically had to make 9 movies. But this season accomplishes so many things. One of my favorite things is that they actually kind of let some of the lesser focused on main characters come to light and just have their moments. You know, Max is, in my opinion, the main character of season 4. Lucas has some pretty awesome moments in this season. He's like, I think, my standout for season 4 aside from Max. And then, and just everything that happens in Hawkins, you know, with them trying to discover what happened in this murder like 40 years ago with the Creel house. and then them figuring out who Vecna is and what he's up to and just trying to figure out how to stop him, and then everything happening in Russia with Hopper and Enzo and the prison guards and everything. And I think those scenes are some of the most emotional in this entire season, especially the scene where Hopper is sitting in the cell with Enzo and he's like, my whole life I thought I was cursed, but like, no, I am the curse. Like, and him basically feeling like he's the reason his daughter died. And just all this stuff is just so heartbreaking. And then his awesome moment where he, decapitates the Demogorgon in the last episode is so good. And then, obviously, my standout is the scene of Max and Lucas when Max is, finally taken by Vecna and, and almost dies. And she's just in Lucas's arm and he's just screaming for help. Like, that scene is just heart-wrenching. But I'm not gonna lie, there is one thing that I wasn't a big fan of this season, and that is a lot of the California stuff. I think 11 scenes in California and in the desert, where she's trying to get back her powers, were so much fun. But my issue comes with Will, Mike, Jonathan, and Argyle. I think their storyline is just kind of a drag. I'm not a big fan of what they did with Mike this season. I think in episodes 8 and 9, he's a lot better than he is in, 1 through 7. But in episodes 1 through 7, he is, insufferable to watch. He is such an awful character. And that pains me so much because from season 1 through 3, he was one of my favorite characters, aside from, Hopper. So to see his character kind of, fall off a cliff, and just seeing him, not be the character that I used to, enjoy so much, was really hard for me to watch. But, I think their storyline got a lot better the longer the season, kind of progressed. But then another great thing that this season did was introducing Vecna, our big bad. And, to be introducing your, quote-unquote big bad of the show in season 4, when there's only 5 seasons, is extremely risky. And they just, knocked it out of the park. Vecna, right off the bat, you could just tell, he means business and he's not messing around. He's so brutal. What he does to these kids by torturing them for days and days and days, and then finally, killing them in the most brutal way possible, is just so insane to me. And I love what they did with this character, and I love that he, is from Eleven's past. I think that brings up a lot of really cool story opportunities. And, Vecna was just so amazing this season, so intimidating, and honestly, it just felt like they weren't going to be able to beat him. I thought he was going to win, which he did, basically, but I thought it was going to be a lot more brutal in a way that, all of our characters are basically dead, because Vecna just felt like this, untouchable, almost like a god of the Upside Down. But again, I could talk for days and days and days about how amazing season 4 is, and just the amazing things that the Duffer Brothers did with this season. But I don't think anybody wants to hear me yap for that long. I've already been talking. My recording says 20 minutes at this point. I don't know how long the actual video is gonna be, but listen, it's not my fault. I yap a little bit too much. I'm not even sure if this is what I'm saying is understandable. I have a touch of autism. It's not my fault. Blame my parents. But I'm going to wrap up the video here, but I want to hear what your guys' rankings are, so make sure to leave that in the comments down below. What's in your first place spot? What's in your last place spot? Why is it season 5? Obviously, because it sucks. If you don't think so, you're just incorrect. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. Season 5 just stinks. I'm sorry. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I told you guys I was going to start posting again, and I didn't lie this time. I'm a man of my word, so I'm going to try to be posting at least once a week. I really missed making these videos, and I really enjoy making these videos. They're so much fun. I love doing it, so I'm going to try to do it as frequently as possible. But make sure to leave your comments down below. Where do you rank your seasons? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.